Picture this: a weapons engineer sitting in a lab somewhere in Tehran, not chasing the most powerful missile in the world, not trying to build something that shows up on a radar screen from 500 miles away. Instead, doing the exact opposite. Asking one question: what if we build something that simply cannot be seen at all? What if the weapon that wins is not the loudest one in the room, but the one that nobody hears coming? That engineer's work is now being felt in some of the most advanced cockpits in the world. And right now, somewhere inside Iranian territory, an American military crew member is missing. Not captured, not dead, missing. And nobody in Washington is saying what comes next. This is the story of a weapon. A war that nobody expected to look like this, and a very serious crack forming in the image of American air dominance. Let's establish exactly where we are in this conflict, because the ground has shifted dramatically. We are now in the 5th week of active U.S. military operations against Iran. When this campaign began, the framing coming out of Washington was bold. Senior officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, stood in front of the cameras and used language like air superiority. They spoke about how degraded Iranian air defenses had become. There was a clear message being transmitted to the American public and to the world. Iran's ability to threaten U.S. aircraft had been systematically dismantled, and what remained of this campaign was a matter of mopping up. Donald Trump himself described the overall trajectory in terms that suggested a swift, contained resolution. Benjamin Netanyahu echoed similar confidence from the Israeli side. Between the two of them, between their administrations, the picture painted was of an adversary on its back, incapable of seriously threatening American military hardware. That picture took a severe hit on a single Friday, and when we lay out what reportedly happened in that 24-hour window, you will understand why the word shock is being used in Washington. Here's what the record now shows. 2 U.S. military aircraft were downed. The first is an F-15E Strike Eagle. This is not a plane from a previous generation. This is a 4.5 generation supersonic fighter, manufactured by Boeing, one of the most capable and versatile aircraft in the American arsenal. It flies deep strike missions into heavily defended territory. It engages in aerial combat. It carries both a pilot and a weapons systems officer in a twin-seat configuration, which means 2 lives are aboard every single sortie. When this jet was hit and went down over Iranian territory, both crew members ejected. One has since been located and recovered, alive, currently receiving medical treatment in U.S. custody. The other crew member is still missing. Search and rescue operations are ongoing as of this reporting. The second aircraft downed was an A-10 Warthog. Those familiar with American military aviation know the A-10 well. It is a ground attack aircraft built around survivability. Its titanium bathtub protects the pilot from ground fire. It is slow, loud, and devastatingly effective at low altitudes, which is exactly the kind of environment where troops on the ground need close air support. It is one of those aircraft that the U.S. military has tried to retire multiple times and been unable to, because nothing else does what it does. Iranian sources, specifically the IRGC Ground Forces Air Defense, have claimed responsibility for the A-10 strike. Iran's Army Air Defense Force separately claimed a second A-10 engagement. Then came the rescue operation, and then things got worse. When U.S. forces launched the mission to locate and extract the F-15E crew, the operation itself came under fire. 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters were struck in the course of that rescue effort. On top of that, Iranian state media has released images purporting to show a U.S. Army CH-47 Chinook helicopter sitting badly damaged at Camp Buring, a significant American military logistics hub in the Gulf. Iranian sources claim the Chinook was struck by a drone while participating in the search for the downed jet's crew. The Pentagon has not confirmed or denied this, But the silence from Washington on that specific claim is, itself, a kind of data point. Now, let's talk about what Iran says it hit on that same Friday, because it goes further than what has been confirmed. The IRGC Aerospace Force issued a statement claiming that on this Friday, which they described as, and I'm summarizing their language, a black and humiliating day for American and Israeli forces, their air defense systems struck an F-35 Lightning II, not an F-15, an F-35. That is a fifth-generation stealth fighter, one of the most expensive and sophisticated combat aircraft ever built, specifically engineered to be invisible to radar. They additionally claimed 3 MQ-9 Reaper and Hermes drones destroyed, plus 2 stealth cruise missiles intercepted. U.S. officials have pushed back specifically on the F-35 claim, stating the aircraft landed safely. That counterclaim is notable because it is one of the few specific denials that has come out of Washington amid an otherwise tight-lipped official response. Whether the F-35 was genuinely struck but safely returned or was not struck at all remains contested. What is not contested is that the White House itself confirmed the F-15E shootdown. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed on the record that the president was briefed on the incident. This is now the first confirmed case in this entire conflict of a U.S. fighter jet being brought down by Iranian fire. That is a historical marker. Whatever else you think about this conflict, that sentence has never been true before this week. So, how is Iran doing this? After weeks of U.S. and Israeli strikes specifically designed to suppress and destroy Iranian air defenses, how is Iran still reaching American aircraft? The answer that military analysts are converging on points to a system called the Majid, M-A-J-I-D. And if you have not come across that name until now, you are in very large company, because this system has not received the kind of attention in Western press coverage that its apparent capabilities now demand. The Majid is an Iranian domestically developed short-range surface-to-air missile system. It was unveiled in 2021. Its declared purpose is the interception of low-flying aircraft. Low-flying aircraft, of course, includes the A-10 Warthog, which operates at exactly that altitude profile. But the detail that makes this system strategically significant is not its range, or its speed, or its warhead. It is how it finds its targets. The Majid does not use radar. Let that land for a moment, because in the context of air warfare, that is a genuinely disruptive choice. Every standard air defense system in the world emits a radar signal, a burst of electromagnetic energy that travels out, bounces off an aircraft, and returns to the launcher, revealing the target's position. That signal is detectable. Modern combat aircraft, especially American aircraft, are equipped with systems specifically designed to detect incoming radar signals, warn the pilot, and in some cases, jam or defeat the tracking. It is a cat-and-mouse game that has been played for decades, and the United States has generally been very good at winning it. The Majid abandons the cat-and-mouse game entirely. Instead of emitting anything, it listens. It uses passive infrared tracking. It detects the heat signature radiated by aircraft engines and exhaust. Heat that every aircraft produces, regardless of how stealthy it is, regardless of radar-absorbent coating, regardless of airframe geometry. An infrared signature is not the same as a radar signature, and the countermeasures designed to defeat radar lock do not apply to a system that never emits a signal at all. For a pilot in the cockpit, the threat picture from a passive infrared system is fundamentally different from a radar-guided threat. Your radar warning receiver stays quiet. Your electronic warfare suite has nothing to jam because there is no signal coming in. The first indication you may have that you are being tracked is the missile itself. This is what undetectable actually means in practical operational terms. Not invisible, not magic. just operating on a physics channel that the standard defensive toolkit is not built to address. The physical configuration of the system reinforces its tactical flexibility. It is mounted on a mobile vehicle. It can be moved, hidden, repositioned constantly, which means finding and destroying it requires either very good intelligence or very persistent surveillance, or both. It carries up to 8 missiles ready to fire, with a range envelope of approximately 8 kilometers, making it highly effective in the low-altitude threat band where attack aircraft like the A-10 operate. Analysts who have examined the Majid have compared it structurally to two well-known Western systems, the American Avenger air defense platform and the Russian Pantsir S-1. Both are considered serious, capable systems. If the Majid delivers comparable performance, it represents a meaningful capability, and one that, crucially, cannot simply be neutralized by strikes on known radar installations. Here's the strategic implication of all of this, and it goes beyond any individual aircraft or any single day of fighting. The premise of the U.S. campaign was suppression of enemy air defenses, SEAD in military terminology. You find the radars, you destroy the radars. You create a permissive environment where your aircraft can operate with manageable risk. That formula has worked in previous conflicts. It has been the template. The Majid, IFM, it is deployed in significant numbers, integrated into the broader Iranian air defense network, and distributed across mobile units embedded with IRGC and Army ground forces throughout the country. Represents a category of threat that said campaigns are not designed to address. You cannot destroy what you cannot locate. Passive, mobile, distributed. Each of those 3 words represents a different reason why the conventional playbook does not easily apply. This does not mean the U.S. cannot adapt. It can, and it will. But adaptation takes time. It takes intelligence work, tactical rethinking, and potentially new hardware or new procedures. While that adaptation is underway, every mission over Iranian airspace carries a risk profile that was not fully accounted for at the start of this campaign. This is the gap between the official narrative and the reality on the ground. It is no longer a small gap. Let's come back to the human dimension, because there is a person missing right now, and this deserves serious attention. The missing crew member from the F-15E is somewhere inside Iranian territory. We do not know their condition. We do not know whether they have been found by Iranian forces, or whether they are still in hiding, attempting to reach a point from which extraction is possible. Iranian state television took a step that significantly complicates the search. It broadcast a public message offering a government reward to any Iranian citizen who locates U.S. military personnel on Iranian soil. That is not a minor operational detail. That transforms the search environment from a military problem into a population scale problem. Every civilian in the relevant area of the country has now been given a financial incentive to actively look for the missing crew member and report their location. That is a difficult environment to operate a rescue in. Donald Trump was asked directly, what will the United States do if the missing crew member is captured or harmed? He did not answer the question. His response was 3 words: this is war. That silence on the specifics has generated its own wave of analysis and concern, because if capture occurs, this conflict transforms overnight into something far more politically complicated than an air campaign. Trump also said separately that the loss of the aircraft would not interfere with diplomacy. That is an interesting claim to make in the immediate aftermath of the shootdown, and it suggests that whatever back-channel conversations are happening about a broader resolution to this conflict, they have not collapsed. But what the negotiating dynamic looks like after Iran has just handed Washington its worst single day of air losses in this conflict, that is genuinely uncertain. One additional detail from this period deserves note, because it tells you something about the coordination between the U.S. and Israel. Israel, which has been conducting its own strikes inside Iran, throughout this conflict, reportedly made the decision to cancel planned strikes specifically to avoid creating interference with the ongoing American rescue operation. Think about what that decision signals. It means that the rescue operation was considered so sensitive, and the risk of Israeli airstrikes creating complications in the rescue environment so significant that the Israelis stood down. That is not a decision made lightly. It reflects just how precarious and high stakes the effort to recover the missing crew member is being considered at the command level. Let's look at the broader cost picture, because these incidents do not exist in isolation. Before this latest 24-hour period, at least 13 American military personnel had already been killed since the campaign began. Earlier in the conflict, 3 F-15E aircraft were reportedly lost, in those cases due to friendly fire incidents rather than enemy action. Add now a 4th F-15E, confirmed downed by Iranian. Fire, an A-10 lost, 2 Black Hawks struck, and the potential Chinook damage at a Gulf base. The human cost, 13 confirmed dead and at least 1 crew member unaccounted for, is rising. These numbers stand in striking contrast to the language that was being used publicly just days before this incident. Pete Hegseth spoke about air superiority. Senior military commanders spoke about how degraded Iranian defenses were. Trump and Netanyahu both portrayed the campaign as on track, as having achieved significant damage to Iran's military capacity. The Majid shootdowns do not disprove every claim made about Iranian air defense degradation. They do prove, definitively, that Iran retains the capability, the will, and the tactical intelligence to reach American aircraft. And they prove that a weapon that nobody in Washington was publicly treating as a priority threat just weeks ago has just announced itself in the most dramatic way possible. Where does this go from here? There are 4 threads worth watching closely. The first and most immediate is the fate of the missing crew member. If they are recovered alive and safely extracted, this becomes a significant incident in an ongoing conflict, but one that ends without the worst possible outcome. If they are captured by Iranian forces, this conflict enters a fundamentally different chapter. A live American prisoner on Iranian soil is a political and strategic event of a completely different order. It creates negotiating leverage for Tehran, creates enormous pressure on Washington, and forces a choice between escalation and negotiation that nobody in either capital wants to face publicly right now. The second thread is the military response to the Majid threat. U.S. air planners will now have to reckon seriously with a passive infrared system integrated into a mobile, distributed Iranian air defense network. That means new tactics, potentially new hardware, and a reassessment of which missions and altitude profiles are acceptable risks. That reassessment is happening right now. The third thread is the diplomatic track. Trump's insistence that the aircraft loss does not affect diplomacy is a signal that a negotiated resolution is still being pursued on some level. The question is whether Iran interprets its demonstrated ability to reach American aircraft as reason to hold out for better terms, or whether the mutual cost of this conflict is creating pressure on both sides to find an exit. The fourth thread is Israel. With Israeli strikes currently paused to support the rescue mission, what happens when that rescue operation concludes? Successfully or not, will determine whether the broader military operation intensifies or holds at its current tempo. Israeli decision-making on this has been closely tied to American positioning throughout, and that relationship will be tested in the coming days. Here's where we land. A few weeks ago, the confident public message from Washington was that this was essentially a manageable operation against an already degraded adversary. What the events of one single Friday have shown is that Iran is neither paralyzed nor finished. It has a weapon, deployed quietly, designed invisibly, and apparently effective against aircraft that the U.S. military considers among its most capable, that nobody was taking seriously enough. The Majid air defense system may have been domestically developed by engineers who nobody was watching. But those engineers understood something that is becoming increasingly obvious. You do not need to win the radar battle if you simply refuse to enter it. For the pilots flying missions over Iran right now, that insight is not theoretical. And for one crew member still unaccounted for somewhere in Iranian territory, it is the most real thing in the world. We will stay on this story. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This conflict is developing fast, and you will not want to miss what comes next.